Vasudevendra Yogendram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattvabodho Bhidiyate. Presently, I am doing chapter 11 and 12 of the Bhagavad Gita and with my teacher. And I thought I'd bring something really valid into this session. See, at the end of chapter 11, Arjuna asked Krishna, Krishna, what is more effective to know the truth? Is it one to bring my mind back and to contemplate on the final reality? That is, that the content of all things is Brahman? Or do I think of you, right? Do I think of the Lord as the intelligence, which is holding all things together, which is sustaining all things, which is changing all things, and which is resolving all things? And an example of this in real life would be, suppose that someone has made you angry and they did something that is just unfair. It's impolite, it's rude, and it's just formed an impression, right? There's no question of avoiding it. It's just there. They just really hurt you and you thought was totally inappropriate. It could have been accidental. It could have been intentional. It could have been out of their own neglect. It could have, maybe you contributed. We don't know. But either way, the situation has turned such that you ended up being hurt. Maybe you were rejected, or maybe you projected and you expected something and they didn't return that favor. So however it turned out, it made you hurt. You got hurt. So Arjuna then wants to know, do I, in this situation, right, do I just recognize this thought of anger or discomfort as just another passing circumstance in time, another form, and the content of this form is awareness, and awareness is free of this? Just like we said, if we have a pleasant form, suppose it's a pleasant form, right? So the plastic is free of the pleasant form, and then we have a distorted form like anger, something that's unpleasant. Still, it doesn't say anything about the plastic. The plastic is through and through, whether it's a pleasant form or an unpleasant form. So do I recognize the anger as merely the content of which is awareness? And then I say, or not even say, you just recognize that awareness is intrinsically free of any form. Thereby, me being that awareness, it makes no difference to me. Or do you, B, say, you know, this anger, this emotion, this has happened. It is disturbing my mind. It does have an effect on me. There's no doubt about it. It is agitating me in some way, my mind. I feel discomfort. When I wake up, it's the first thing on my mind. Even before sleep, it's there at some degree or the other. And I need to look into this and understand what narrative, what stories am I telling myself, which is making this emotion not go away. I need to look into this, do my part, do my due part, reflect it, and ask Lord for help. Sometimes we have tried all options. We have done to the best of our abilities. We have taken time, sometimes days, to look into it, but the intensity is still there. It's clearly not going away, or it is going away, but it's just slow. And thus you asked Lord for help. So Arjuna wants to know, what do I do? What is better, Krishna? How do you think Krishna responds to this? A little bit of the Gita discussion. Unmute. What does Krishna say?
Second option.
Second option, okay. Could be very well. Obviously, someone's going to answer now. First option, both of them. Would Leo like to explain why, or someone would like to add?
Because both are true. You need to, I mean, it'd be very easy. Okay, it'd be very easy to go the first one. And that would, if that solves the problem, great. But if it doesn't, then it needs more work, and then you probably need to go through it and exhaust whatever it is that you're feeling. But always coming back to the first option, because that's the truth.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
both are true.
Yeah, so both are true. So, okay. Would anyone like to add? Leo, I fully understood what you said. What option? Would you like to put in your own words? Yes, Gary.
I think maybe if you don't talk it through with the person that you have the problem with, it's going to come up again, either with them or with another person, and you're going to have to live through this over and over. It'll be like Groundhog Day,
Yeah. This is true. So suppose it is like Groundhog Day, and what do you do? How do you, because you want to be free of this. Who wants to have this sort of bother them when it's, because you would expect it to sort of decrease over some time, but suppose it's not, or it's just taking a long time. And so yes, we'll start with Meena. See, it depends, doesn't it? It really depends on where you're at. Because if it does have an emotional impact in a particular area, see, that warrants some work, some self-reflection, then absolutely we'll apply number one. Because by going to number two, what would that do? That's just looking at it from a standpoint of what it actually is, but you intellectually understand it is awareness, but do you emotionally feel consistent with what you intellectually understand? Yes, there's a discord. So we can intellectually understand, yes, the content of any thought is awareness, but do I really feel like that? Do I experience my sense as a free individual who is intrinsically free of all thoughts, of all memories? It's not like we discard the first one, obviously. The first one, as Leo said, is, however, the second one is for those who, whenever you feel it is warranted to apply so, whenever you feel it is justified to do so, why not? Let's look into it. Let's reflect into it so that the intensity may reduce. But suppose you have looked into it over and over again, and it's still there, and you've done your homework, right? You've gone through your process of forgiving and looked at, even talked it out with the person, but it's still there. Then one can apply option one, because what happens is there's a distance between by the time we apply something and by the time it actually has an impact on our psyche. And we call this just that duration, that time period between having done my work and having actually experienced the fruits of that work. And that delay, that in-between period, can seem like nothing's happening. So having done the work, right, having applied number two, says Krishna, having looked at it from all possible situations, you know now that I've done my work and all I could do, then we can bring in number one. So this is a lovely answer. In other words, it means we cannot quite put it categorically as number one or two. And even then, you cannot quite say it's always going to be number one. It's always going to be the content is being awareness of all things, or it's always number two. Because see, this is where the difference between we have black and white teachings, and we put some shades of gray in between. Suppose you're able to say number one, the content of this is awareness. You can say that easily to something that doesn't hold you so deep, right? So strong. But then there's other areas of life. There are other people who may have triggered us in a different way, with whom we have a different relationship with whom it is not quite appropriate to say that, because that kind of emotion is a lot more intense. So in that scenario, we don't put number one, we apply number two. So again, it's not one or two only, it is both, depending on whatever you feel is the right thing to do, based on where you're at, based on your understanding, based on your own stage, based on your own evolution as a human being. So again, in other words, we listen to where we are, and based on that, we apply the right method. Knowing this, what method is to be applied, which one do you think Tattva Bodha is speaking about? Method one or method two?
I think number one.
Again, depends on what stage of the book we're at. But for now, yes, it seems like we're speaking about number one, more or less. Yeah. Maybe when we get to the Lord, then maybe we can introduce and we can change the context a little bit. But yes, so I want us to first see the context of the teaching, because maybe if we go through this at one point or the other, you can say, well, this is just a lot of facts. It's a lot of information. And, and you may say that, but someone else may appreciate it. And I've seen this happen. I've seen people who just sort of happens, they say, I can't listen to this because it's just, it's like intellectual. And we often get that objection, but it is intellectual to some, but it's actually not meant to be an intellectual endeavor. It's just meant to point out the reality. And the reality is, at the beginning, it may sound intellectual, but as we look at it through some time and you reflect upon it, you find out that this information is dynamic. It can be used in a way to help you to deal with these situations, deal with life. In particular, when a thought is coming over, then yes, we can apply number one. Okay. So having said that, I think we can move on, and providing a context, we can move on in this context now. So we need to teach within this context of where and what's the practical use of the Tattva Bodha. Okay. We are asking, what is Atma, right? Atma kaha. And last week I said we're going to discuss what's the Swarupa, right? The direct essence of who you are. And we said so far, you are Chit. You are awareness. And we used an analogy of a light, like a light in whom whatever shows up in that light, it is helplessly lit up. It's not like you can help it. It's just helplessly lit up, because there's a conscious being, and whatever arises in this conscious being, you, it's going to get lit up. It gets lit up in me. It gets lit up in you. It gets lit up in everyone. It gets lit up even in the most dullest mind imaginable, except the conversation is going to be different. One person is going to have, maybe a positive thought in reference to who they are as a person, but another person is going to have a discouraging thought in reference to who they are as a person. So again, we're not looking at the stories. We're now analyzing the fact that a story is lit up for both the smart person or the clear person and the person who's going through a hard time. The fact that both stories are lit up as though under the spotlight of a flashlight, that is chit, that is awareness. And then we want to ask, what's the nature of this awareness? Like, if we were to ask, can you tell us more about this consciousness that I am, this awareness that I am? And before I move on, are we clear, decently clear on this word consciousness and awareness? And do you know why we use two words? Like, why do we use two words? Why don't we just stick with one word? Variety. Okay, if we just stuck with one word all the time, then it may have maybe a connection with one person, but with another, it's not going to have so much of a connection with. So this is why the scriptures will use different words. They're not meant to confuse you. They're just meant to talk to different personalities. Okay. We also said this chit is the knowledge in which objects take place. And we said this knowledge is often confused with information. However, this is not the case. Knowledge has two definitions. The first common definition is information, like blueprint of how things are working. But the second definition of knowledge is literally awareness or consciousness. And you will even find this in some English dictionaries. It's not just Sanskrit. So awareness or chit is, or you are knowledge. So in other words, not information, but knowledge in whom objects take place. And when an object takes place, there is knowledge. It becomes an object of knowledge. It becomes an object of consciousness, an object of your awareness. So this is what we mean by knowledge. So we used consciousness, awareness, and knowledge. Then we ask, what is the nature of chit? And then it goes on, and the verse says, Sat-Chit. So this chit is Sat, which means it is always true. Even when time is temporarily subsided in your experience, then there's one thing that hasn't subsided. And what's that? You. Okay. Like it's not that it's a thing, of course, but it's one thing that has not gone, which is you, the one that later on reports and says there was no sense of time. So time was able to go away. And even we will, even under the experience of a samadhi, right, or a deep meditation, one may even experience that there's no sense of space because objects are gone. They have closed their eyes. There's no sense of space. There's no sense of time. It's a timeless, spaceless reality, suppose. And so in other words, space and time and objects have gone under the experience of a meditation, but what has not gone? Well, what has not gone is the light who was shining the absence of thoughts, the absence of objects, the absence of time, the absence of space. So that one was awareness. That is awareness, the one that was not gone. So this shows us that the nature of awareness is that which obtains not only all the time in the past, present, and future, but also in a place of no time, in a place of distorted time, in a place of familiar time, in a place of unfamiliar time, like a dream or some magical experience. And therefore, the nature of chit is sat. And what does sat mean? It means it obtains in the past, present, and future. And it also obtains when there is no sense of past or future. And I'm not going to say the present intentionally because we need to analyze this word, what present really means. Okay? So what does this mean? It means that who was there yesterday? You know, I was there yesterday. Who was there 5 years ago? I was there 5 years ago. Who's going to be there tomorrow? I will be there tomorrow, right? So it's the basic idea that, you know, I will be there and I was there and I am still here now. So this I is that sat, existent, now, and now. Okay. Okay. So let's look at this word present, because I intentionally didn't use the word present when I said that one who obtains in the past and the future was I. But what about the present? See, we need to look at time to understand what time really is, because we often sort of say, we speak about this word, you know, time is so and so, but what is the word time? Okay, so let's look at that. Oh, the time is now 7 to 4, at least in Australia. Okay, so we're always worried about time to catch the bus, time to catch to eat our food, time. All right. So let's look at this. See, yesterday, suppose you say now yesterday, right? Yesterday was. Okay, when are you saying that? Yesterday was. You're saying that now. We'll call that present. Suppose you imagine the future tomorrow. You say, okay, tomorrow I have to go to the dentist, suppose. When are you imagining going tomorrow in the future? You're imagining that now. You're imagining that in the present. So whatever moments we have about yesterday or 5 years ago or once upon a time, you know, those quote good old times, I don't know why they were so good, because if you did go to those good old times, you will realize they were not so good. Okay, they were just times. So sometimes we have to drop that adjective, good or bad, just times. Okay, so whatever time it was in the past, okay, even if it feels real, the fact is that is occurring when? It's occurring now in this very present. And tomorrow, right, as much as, for example, anxiety, what is anxiety? Anxiety is thinking about the future, a scenario that is unwelcomed. So if I think about an unwelcome scenario, something that is not in my favor, a case scenario that is unpleasant, or you know, it's not something that you would like to have happen, that's called anxiety, imagining the future. And so in that anxiety mode, it seems very real. In fact, how do we show this? We show this because the body gets warm, we get sweaty, we get quite, you know, the body gets stirred up. So the mind has this great power to imagine a future that one's almost as if they're in the future. But if you look at that, it's actually happening in the very present right now. So if time then is really nothing but the present, you understand now why? When I say time, suppose I say 5 minutes from now, and I'm like, oh, I've got to do this for 5. See, when he's saying that right now, okay? So no matter what you contemplate, no matter what you say or remember, it's always going to be happening in the very present right now. So when we say time, what are you really talking about when you say time, ultimately? You're saying present. You understand this? So then the question arises, what is the present? Okay. So if time is the present, then what is the present? Okay, let's look into the present. Suppose that you and I want to arrive to the absolute present, because we hear this, right? We say, come back to the present. You know, I've got to come back to the present. Let me just take a deep breath. Okay, let me just come back to the present. Okay. Come back to the present, please. Okay, be in the now, please. Okay. All right, let's look at this now. Let's look how much being in the now can we really be in, if we can even be in the now. Let's see. Okay, let's try to be in the now. All right, so we'll look at this word present. Suppose I want to arrive to the present, and I take a very big scale, like maybe a millennium, 1,000 years. Okay. And I say, okay, let's start 1,000 years. And I want to break this down all the way to the present. So we go 1,000 years, 1 millennium is made up of 1 or 10 centuries. Each century, right? 10 centuries, right? The century is 100 years, right? Okay. And each century is, okay, 100 years. Now, 100 years we have made up of, right, 1 century made up of 101 years. So 1 year times this by 100. All right. So we need to minimize this because we're still not at the present. We're at 100-year mark. So let's take 1 year and we'll break this down further into 365 days. Okay. So we have 1 day times 365. Okay, we're still not at the present. How about we take 1 month? Okay, so 1 month is closer to the present because it's made up of 30 days. Now we had 365 days, and now we have only 30 days to go to arrive to the present. You understand? Okay, so we take 30 days, and 30 days is made up of, suppose, 4 weeks. So we'll just take 1 week. Okay, so we're a lot closer now to the present moment. 1 week to the present. And then we look at into 1 week and we say, well, that's made up of 7 days. All right, so we'll take 1 day then. Maybe this is going to get us much closer to the present moment. And then we'll take 1 day and we'll say, okay, 1 day is made up of 1 hour times 24. So we'll take just one of those 24s and we'll just take 1 hour. All right, we're closer to the present moment. And then we'll take 1 hour and we'll divide that into 1 minute times 60s of those. And we'll just take 1 minute of those 60s. Maybe now we're really close to the present moment, 1 minute away from the present. And then we'll take 1 minute and we'll divide that into 60 of 1 seconds. So we'll take one of those 60s, one of those 60 seconds, and we are so close to the present moment. We are 1 second away from the present moment. This is exciting stuff, man. All right. So we'll take 1 second and we'll divide this into 100. And out of those 100 milliseconds, we'll take 1 unit of that. Okay. So we have now 1 millisecond away from the present. However, we got a problem because that 1 millisecond is made up of further so many picoseconds. So we'll take 1 picosecond, which is, I believe, either 100 or 1,000 or whatever number makes up 1 millisecond. And we are so close to the present moment. And then we go further and further and further like this until we arrive to Planck time, which I believe is 10 to the negative 47. So this is 0 dot, and then 47 zeros, 1 of a second. However, there's a problem. That's as far as scientists can go. I mean, that's according to the limitations of their instrumentation. We need the present moment. I don't need 0.4701 of a second. I need the present moment. So you tell me now, when are you possibly, if ever, are you going to arrive to the present moment if you keep on drilling and drilling and drilling, knowing that every unit is always and further resolvable into even smaller units? When are you ever going to arrive to the present moment? Never. Never. However, there is a present. That's a fact. So if we are never going to arrive, according to our analysis, to the present moment, and yet there is a present, we all know there is a present, then what is that present referring to? To the one that was there, present throughout the entire inquiry of trying to get to the present moment. That one we call awareness. That one we call you. So whoever was there in the painstaking analysis of trying to get to the present moment, the one who was there at 1 millennium, the one who was there at the century, the one who was there at the month and the week and the hour and the second and the millisecond, and the hypotheses of trying to break that down even further, the one who was there throughout, that one was the present. Therefore, if time is nothing but the present, and the present is nothing but you, then what is time? It's another mithya. It's another mithya that depends entirely upon you, the presence in whom all things come and go, all things, all analyses, all thoughts happen, all emotions happen. You understand? So time being none other than you being none other than, the foundation of time, which means that you are essentially free of time, because time analysis still depends on the present one to be there throughout the entire time. Okay. Then we can ask one question further. If this chit, if you, right, as though light, that just illumines even this experience right now, illumining Andre speaking about time, illumining yourself, your body sitting down on a chair, listening to this conversation, that one light. If the truth of that one light, or the nature of that one light, is the foundation of time, is existence, then what else is the nature of you awareness? The verse further continues and says, Ananda. Okay, so what is Ananda? Okay, I'll ask you a question instead of answering directly. I want you to, with your best capacity, give your awareness, your presence, right? The presence, the one that's present. I want you to give that a width and a height. I want you to measure that and write the coordinates. How tall is your awareness? How high is your awareness? Measure it. Oh, my awareness is as tall as the ceiling of the house. Yeah, but that's your sense organs just telling you ceiling is over there. It's not limiting your awareness, because if the ceiling was up to the sky, then you would be aware up to the sky. If the ceiling was, and your eyes could see, suppose 20 kilometers, then that still you would be aware of that much. So don't mistake how much your eyes can see. I cannot be aware of what's behind the wall. That's not the point, because if the walls were to be broken down, awareness would immediately be present to accommodate whatever is behind the walls. So we're not talking about the limitations of our senses. I'm asking the question, what is the width and height of your awareness? After which, if you go outside, suddenly there's no more awareness. Okay, imagine this now, right? Just an experiment. Like your room. Take your room, for example. And you're walking in one half of your room, and your awareness goes to the half point of your room. And the moment you go outside, suddenly there's nothing. In fact, you can't even say there's nothing, because to say there's nothing, you have to be aware of that. You understand this? So if your awareness cannot be given any kind of dimensions, any kind of height or width or XYZ axis, then that means that your awareness is not limited by space. Because, see, to say something has a width or a height means it is, right, something concrete, right? This has a width and a height, right? But you're aware of this. So this means awareness is bigger than this, right? It is not limited by this shape of this. I see the entirety of this little container. It's not like I only see one half. Let me give you one little example. suppose you were traveling and you were traveling with whomever, right? You were just maybe traveling by yourself. If you want to travel with someone, fine, but traveling by yourself. And you're traveling high and higher and higher and higher up and higher up. And along your ways, along your travels, you see the planets, you see the sun, you see the galaxies, you see some supernovas, you see other worlds. Suppose there's other worlds, right? See other lokas. You kind of say hello to heaven. Maybe you say Pitraloka. You see your ancestors there. Who knows, right? Maybe they're waving through the window, and you're aware of the heaven, and then you're aware of the Pitraloka. You're aware of all of these, right? Satyaloka. And then, you pass Brahmaloka. You kind of want to visit some Brahmaloka, knock on the door and say, hey, I'm really curious. I want to see the highest Loka there is. What's this world like? I'm really curious. And Brahmaji, shows you around. And you're looking around and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm aware of Brahmaji showing me. I'm aware of Brahmaloka. Cool. I'm going to go higher up. So how high do you need to keep on traveling until you're no longer aware? You understand? How high until your awareness until you go outside the boundaries of awareness and suddenly, right, you just go out of existence because you can't say, oh, suddenly there's nothing. To say there's nothing means you're still aware. So I'm not saying suddenly there's nothing. I mean, go out of existence. How high do you need to go on until that happens? In fact, to say, oh, I think I just went out of existence, you're still aware of that. So nothing has really confined your awareness. No world has confined your awareness by any sense, which is why we say awareness is also limitless. It is Ananda. Therefore, so far we can say that, who am I? Says the verse asks, who am I? What is my nature? My nature is Sat. My nature is started with Chit. I am Chit. I am awareness. And what is this awareness? It is the presence which is self-evident to itself, and everything else depends upon it to become evident, right? This is a simple explanation. What else is this awareness? What's the nature of this awareness? It obtains all the time. So no matter how far you're traveling or how long, there will always be awareness is never going to go out of existence. It's never going to go out of time. It's always going to be true. Therefore, it is Sat. It obtains in all three periods of time, and even when there is no sense of time. And awareness is Ananda. In other words, it is not bound by spatial limitations. However, you may now argue and say, don't we say that Ananda is bliss? Because we heard this, right? We heard this in different texts that Ananda, when they say, who are you? I am bliss. So why do you think some people or some texts may even imply, and they say Ananda is bliss? There's a reason for this. Suppose I just said to an ordinary person, I said you're limitless, right? And you're like, oh, thanks. Cool, thanks. But then I say to you, you are happiness. In fact, someone has sent a chat, haven't they? They said, happiness, this is excellent. So when the moment we hear happiness, what happens? We have a value for happiness. And therefore, we can relate and we want to then investigate into Ananda. So if Ananda is bliss or happiness, now I have something to work for. There's a motivation to investigate that. So let's look into happiness a little bit and look into what does Vedanta have to say about happiness. What is happiness? What is happiness not? What is happiness not? I think this is a better way to start it. Okay, suppose we say happiness is a fulfillment of desire. Suppose we say this. Is this true? Happiness is a fulfillment of desire. Suppose you say yes, okay? But if I fulfill my desire, I cannot be necessarily happy. It doesn't mean that I'm guaranteed to be happy if I fulfill my desire. And sometimes when, if we fulfill our desire, then yeah, we could be happy for a moment. However, very quickly we discover that we actually want something else. So fulfillment of desire is not happiness, because if it were to be so, then whoever fulfills that desire would also gain happiness. You understand? Okay. So what about is happiness? Happiness is a chosen perspective. Yes. Okay. This is also true. What now? A chosen happiness is a chosen perspective in the light of, suppose, your likes and dislikes. Okay, but then again, if that was the case, then that means every single time I have that object, that will guarantee, or I have that attitude towards that object in that same manner, it will guarantee happiness. Again, that is not the case. And also, if everyone had that perspective also, that should guarantee happiness. So it cannot be in the perspective either, because, tomorrow you could have the same perspective and it no longer gives you the same happiness as it did yesterday. Happiness is in the object. Suppose we say that. If the happiness was in the object, then that means that whenever I have that object in my presence, it would guarantee happiness every single time without fail. That is obviously not the case. That is not the experience. And it will also produce happiness for everyone else, that same object. What about happiness is in an adjective, right? For example, a happy person, right? We say, they're a happy person. Well, what do you mean by that? They're a happy person. What tells you that they're a happy person? Is it a smile? A smile doesn't mean it's a happy person. It just means the muscles have stretched in such a fashion as to produce a smile. One could be trained to, like a salesperson, to kind of give you some charms and use the right lingo. Like, oh, I'm a happy salesman. This product has given me happiness, and look at me, I'm a happy person. So there's no guarantee that person's happy, because you don't know how they are when you're not looking at them. They could go home and I could have some problems there. So it cannot be in the adjective. Where else could it be? Let's see in the chat. Happiness is in a feeling. Okay. So now, yes, happiness, it is a feeling. We say happiness is in a feeling, but in what feeling now could happiness be that is going to always be the same for everyone? Because we're talking not individual happiness, we're talking universal happiness here. That's the inquiry here, right? So if everyone had that feeling, right, some people would interpret that feeling as offensive. Even they would say, I don't want this feeling of love. Believe it or not, some people, when they experience love feeling, they sort of say, oh, this is for weaklings. We don't need this. The state of mind, temporary freedom of conflict. Okay, we're getting there. Happiness is in, how about a place? Okay, happiness is in a place. So this means that whenever we go to a certain place, like the beach, instantly, right, one moment you're unhappy. The moment your foot lands on the beach, you're half happy. When your second foot lands on the beach, you're fully happy. Again, that is not the case. Otherwise, that place, you just, whenever you're unhappy, just go to that place, your magical place. Hopefully you put a chalkboard around that little circle, like a little dimension in which you can walk, and it was going to guaranteed smile on your face. That's absolutely not the case. Maybe it's at a friend's place. Well, sometimes we're happy there. Sometimes we're sort of neutral. What about in time? Happiness is in time. So is this the case? Happy hour. Happiness is in a happy hour, right? In America. So, you could have a happy hour moment, but people are not necessarily happy. They're, desperately looking on their phones for something to make them happy during the happy hour. And also, if if happiness was in a particular time, then then what will happen? Then when that time comes, then instantly, like it's like 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, instant, everyone's happy. Again, that is not the case. What happiness is happy hour? Okay, 6 p.m. Okay. So 6 p.m. happy hour ends, instantly smile, and then no smile. Smile just faded away, melted away like nothing happened. Okay. What about happiness is in the mind? How about that? Happiness is in the mind. Happiness is in the feeling, right? Now we had a few chats here. Happiness is in your mind. Happiness is in your perspective, because your perspective is in your mind, by the way. If that was the case, what would happen? Since your mind's always with you, you would by definition always be happy. You understand? And also that means even in your dream, because in your dream, you have your mind there. That means if happiness was in the mind, there would be no nightmares. But, we want to get out of our dream because it's like sometimes scary, right? So it cannot be in the mind either. What about happiness is in the absence of thoughts? Absence of thoughts. I'll get to the passing experience soon. They say in samadhi, right? When there's a samadhi, there's absence of thoughts, absence of objects in the world. Then you are really happy. Could that be the case? If that was the case, okay, that means if happiness is really there, that means then happiness is not existent anywhere else outside of samadhi, because we're talking universal, by the way. You could be holding a child and you could be very happy. You could be holding a child, could be next to you, and you're a lot happier than in a meditation when there's absence of objects. Understand? That could be the case very much. So it's not in the absence of thoughts. It's not in the mind. So where is happiness? Happiness is stopping agitation in the mind and not being attached to the worldly. Happiness is mithya. Okay. So many suggestions. This is wonderful. All right. We need to analyze this a little bit according to the Vedantic model. What are we, fourth Diri? We have some time. So we are analyzing happiness and what is it that produces happiness? Okay. So we said your nature is, what's one of the first words we used? I believe it was nityam, right? Nityam. So permanent, right? The permanent reality. Nityam. And then we said nityam, nityam vastu eka, right? Brahman. So in other words, this means eternal, right? Permanent. And we said this eternal permanent reality is called Brahman. So nityam, Brahman. Same words, right? They're synonyms. Further, now we said the question, what is Atma, right? What is Brahman? And we said Sat and Chit and Ananda. Suppose this entire whiteboard is, right, awareness. So whatever I put on this whiteboard, what happens? It's going to shine through and it's going to reveal that object, right? So this entire substratum is consciousness, which is just like light. It just shines through and objects become evident. So let's start with an object, right? Remember last week, I said there's only two things in existence. There is an object and there is a subject. Okay. So let's write an object and we'll connect the subject and object on this platform, right? So we'll put an object here and we'll call it object. Now, so far, we're not talking about how objects came. That's going to come later in the book. We're just saying, for now, there's an object. And what is object? How do you define an object? Time, space, and everything else, right? In Sanskrit, we call this jagat, right? Universe. Time, space, and objects. So whatever you observe right now, this whiteboard is an object, right? This pen is an object, right? My face is an object. These sounds that you're hearing now is an object. Your hand that you're holding is your body is an object, right? Okay. And then we said there is one more. There's two things the whole reality, I said last week, is divided into two things. There is an object and there is a subject. So we'll write subject here. So what is a subject? Subject is your mind, right? Your mind, which is able to, right, know about the world. In fact, in the verse, it's going to say the subject is your body mind, right? So it's going to say it is your three bodies. This is going to come, don't worry. We're just going to use what the verse is saying, right? So it's your three bodies. It's your physical body, your subtle body, which is just the mind, your thoughts and your emotions, and your causal body. So three bodies, or is going to use another model called the five covers. Okay, they're the same thing. Five covers is just more specific than the three bodies. Okay, so we're talking about your three bodies right now. Okay, which is your physical body. Okay, your thoughts and emotions. So maybe we'll just put thoughts and emotions, right? Something we can relate with instead of using these technical words. Thoughts and emotions. Okay, memories, right? Insights, epiphanies, and so on. This subject, we can say, give two names to the subject. We can call the unliberated subject and the liberated subject, right? In Sanskrit, we call the ajnani and jnani, the one who is still got to figure things out, right? So we'll just call them unliberated, and a liberated. Okay, so this one, right, moksha, right? Here we have moksha. Okay, so they are liberated. And this one is just an ordinary citizen, okay, a good fella. They could be exercising dharma, ethics, a family man, doesn't matter, but they're a subject. Okay, so the question is, what happens when there is happiness, right? Or should I say this? Let's go a different question. What prevents or what denies happiness from the standpoint of the unliberated person? What happens? Like, what actually makes a person unhappy? Okay, for this, we have to look at what's the nature, like, how do I see myself? What is the definition of self? We'll start there, right? So we'll say Atman. Atman, it just means I. When I say self, Atman, I just mean I. Like, so what is this definition of an I, of I? Atma or self equals, so for the unliberated person, Atma or self or I, right? I, like I am, equals what? Equals, understand? Three bodies. So equals whatever I feel, equals desire. So if there's a desire, then that desire is I. It's my desire, right? So, right, if there's a thought or like a sad emotion, right, then it's mine. Therefore, like it's my problem because the I is placed in one of the three bodies, either in the body, the physical body, it's placed in one's sense of who they are as a person, one's sense of individuality, or it's placed in, ignorance. It's placed in like, I don't know. If you say, I don't know, then it's sort of, you're identified with ignorance. Like the I is identified with ignorance when it says, I don't know, okay? So what denies happiness for this person? Well, is the subject ever the object? No. So we'll here put a fancy person, right? Suppose it's a fancy person. And this subject wants the fancy person, right? So how would they have to see the fancy person? As themselves or as other than themselves? They would have to see themselves as other than themselves. So because the fancy person, right, is still like an object, different from me, different from myself. For that reason, what do I have to do? I have to bring this object, that's called dating and so on, right? And I have to make it as though it is mine. right? And we call this union, right? I now have union with this object. I'm driving the car. I am with my partner. I am, union with the food. It is part of me. It has entered. It has as though entered me. So while the food was there, or whoever this you want to put here, then that was as though different. And when it's kind of, with you, with one, what happens? You're happy. This is why we have a happy, a laughing, a fat Buddha. You know how a fat Buddha? Why is he fat and why is he smiling? What does this imply? This, big stomach. That means he's full. That means when you're full, when you have fed, you're happy. That means all that food is now, right, as though it is yours. So nothing is missing. Therefore, what makes a person happy? Like a standard, ordinary, unliberated person, right? What makes them unhappy? The fact that I see myself, right? The I being placed in the three bodies. The three bodies are always different from the object because it's a different form. One form is suppose slim. This form, suppose she's very slim and he's sort of bulky. So he wants a slim partner. So now, the three bodies is different from the object. And therefore, there is a discord. And in reference to what I like, right? Suppose I value a certain object, because not everyone values this. Someone values, dollars, money. So as long as I have a value, right? Like what I like for money, then I want to what? Make money, bring it into myself. Okay. So in Sanskrit, we call this three words, important words. The subject we call pramata. Pramata. So this is just a new Sanskrit word, and it's going to come handy later on. Pramata. Pramata. The object is called prameya, and that object, when it's inside the mind, when it's actually as though it's mine, right? We call that pramana. Pramana. So it's just a pramana, it's just a thought of the object. It's just a thought in the mind of an external object. So we have pramata, the subject, the prameya, the object, and the pramana, the thought of the object. So these three. Okay. Now, why do we want to know this? Because if you ask, what is the experience like for a liberated person? Okay. This was unliberated. What about the liberated? The liberated also has the three bodies. Okay. They also have the mind, obviously. They have to think, they have to move, they have to wake up, they have to eat, and so on. There are still thoughts, there are still concerns, there are still sort of, you're still trying to navigate your experience in the world, right? So it's the same thing. But what do they understand? They understand that what do we say about this? Remember that inquiry at the beginning? Everything enjoys existence. No matter what you ask, right? This enjoys existence, this enjoys existence, the pramana enjoys existence, the pramata enjoys existence, the prameya enjoys existence. You understand? So they all enjoy existence, and that existence is none other than one, right? One satyam, we had the word satyam there. So it's just one existence, which is manifesting as different forms. This existence, my body mind, is manifesting as this, and that body mind or that object over there is manifesting as that. But what do all manifestations resolve into? What do all mithya, what do all mithyas resolve into? The one satyam. And that satyam, as we did that analysis, right? We can negate desire. When desire is no longer there, who's still there? I am. And then when time is no longer there, who's still there? I am. Remember that little analysis? Table, wood, and so on. And who was there all the time? I. And we asked the question, Atma kaha, what is Atma? we said not only is Atma awareness, right? I am aware of analysis of time, analysis of the table, analysis of the molecules, analysis of the, of the particles, analysis of da. So there's an awareness, but who's existent throughout? Who's existent throughout? Who is not only aware, Chit, but who's also existent throughout? The same I, right? So it's the same, whenever you say awareness, right? Wherever there's awareness, that's exactly where, existence of awareness is. So we did an analysis and we said everything ultimately can be resolved into Sat-Chit. So the pramata, right? Your body, mind, your thoughts, inclinations, desires are resolvable into Sat-Chit. Pramana, right? Your thought is resolvable, into Sat-Chit. The body is resolvable into Sat-Chit. And the object is certainly resolvable into Sat-Chit, right? These three words. So all we did now was just kind of give the experience. What is it that makes an unhappy person? The unhappy person sees themselves. Where's their eye placed? In the physical body, right? In their thoughts. And those thoughts are always by nature, right, going to be different, right? Because the object is always going to be different from the subject, because the I is placed in the subject. Therefore, the subject is separate from the object. And therefore, there's always the sense of I want this to be mine. Why is this statement there? I want this to be mine, because that I who wants sees themselves as different from the object. Whereas for a wise person, whatever I want, what is the content of that which I want? Existence. What is the content of the wanter? Existence. So where is the focus of the wise person? It's in the existence aspect. Where is the focus of the unwise person? In mithya, in forms, in changes. Therefore, unhappiness is naturally going to be there for an unwise person, because the subject is never going to be the object. They're always going to be different things. See, what are we seeking then? We're seeking freedom from the unliberated person, right? Freedom from smallness, because the three bodies are always going to be small. The thoughts are always going to be limited. The emotions are never going to extend for a long period of time. So however you look at it, there's going to be smallness in reference to, your physical body, your thought system, and so on. So the problem is this fella, the one whose I is placed in the three bodies, is always going to feel small, because they see big objects, beautiful objects out there, and these beautiful objects seem to not be so wrinkly, and therefore I want to be with an unwrinkly one so that I can experience myself as a youthful one. Okay, so this is the focus. So what's the problem there? The focus is in the wrong place. For the liberated one, the focus is always in the existence of a thing. Whereas for the unliberated, it is always in the mithya form of a thing. And one more thing that I want to mention here, coming back to Ananda, because this whole diagram started off by analyzing the word Ananda, this happiness. It's not like we're lacking Ananda, because see, Ananda, to understand this word Ananda now, there's two definitions actually. Definition 1 and definition 2. Definition 1 is fullness, and definition 2 is what we call happiness. It's not like we don't know happiness. We all know happiness, right? We all have happiness, moments of happiness. So it's not like you and I are missing out on happiness. What is the problem here? The problem is we're missing out on knowledge of Ananda. So let me explain. This is very important, because it's very unfortunate that when people look at this word Ananda in the Sat-Cit-Ananda, they want to convert this into happiness. They want to convert this into definition number 2, right? Into an actual experience of limitless. They actually want to, kind of extend that moment. Like, oh, I felt it for 5 minutes. Now I want to make it for 10 minutes. So where's the focus? In definition number 2. what you really need to do is take definition number 2, which is experiential happiness, and ask the question, how do you feel when you're happy? Full. Is this your experience? What does fullness mean? It means in this moment when I am happy, even if it's for 1 second, right? How do you feel? Like nothing is missing in this moment. I am fulfilled. I am like that fat, smiling Buddha who's just full, who cannot even, whose thought does not even arise of another. There's no sense of otherness in that moment. Therefore, this Ananda is meant to, you're supposed to, according to the scriptures, look at your happiness, your experiential happiness, and actually inquire, what is the nature? How do I feel when there's happiness? I feel full. And this fullness, I am. So let me just explain this a little bit further. See, what does fullness mean? Fullness means it's not empty, it's not partial, it's full. That means there's nothing that's missing. Suppose you have an ocean, okay? Ocean is, suppose, full, okay? All water from our world, from our mountains, from our clouds, ultimately goes back into the ocean. The ocean that you're swimming in nowadays, that same water was there 30,000 years ago. All saints, all people, how many people have ultimately swam in the ocean or contacted water or drank the water? The water that you're drinking today is the same water that was drunk millions of years ago by species, 65 million years ago by dinosaurs. The same water, you just go through a recycle process. Nature is the best recycler. All water ultimately ends up into the ocean. So even if the water is away, or if the water is part of the ocean, it's all coming from the one same full ocean. That ocean, we can say, is full. But how does the ocean, how does this fullness, this Ananda express in the ocean? Millions. Roaring fullness, scary fullness, calm fullness, beautiful fullness. You want to take a photo of the wave. Danger, scary wave. You understand? Fullness has millions and millions and millions of expressions. And this fullness is all coming from this one full ocean. Therefore, your own fullness, right? Your own being Ananda, your nature being fullness. How many ways does fullness express? It expresses as the universe, it expresses as 8.4 billion different faces, personalities, different birds, and even within the category of the birds, like the kingfisher or the parrot. How many versions of parrots are there? And each parrot has a different personality of their own. Or even the beehives, worker bees, the queen bee. How many expressions of fullness is there? There are infinite expressions. So whenever you feel happy, that sense of fullness is the very nature that from which this entire universe arises. So therefore, I want to bring this again. This Ananda is not meant to be extended when you say Sat-Cit-Ananda. It's not an experience. The experience is going to come there either way, one way or the other. But it is rather a teaching tool to show you that that fullness is your nature. And how do you know it's your nature? Because when you're happy, do you complain? Hey, I've been so happy nowadays. I just can't take it anymore. It's so hard. Oh my God, I'm so happy. Can you help me out, please? I need to go to a psychologist. You go to a psychologist and you say, hey, I'm happy. What are you going to do? It's going to be the weirdest case ever for a psychologist. This guy is happy and he's coming to me. He's happier than I am. He wants my help. Nobody complains when they're happy. And nobody can stand being unhappy for too long. which shows us that we always propagate towards our nature. We always innocently move towards who we are. The birds will always go back to the nest because that's where they belong. You know, the lion pride will always find its lions, and it will always hang around its own lion pride because that's where it belongs. We always move towards happiness because that is our nature. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.